Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. Hey, more Diablo 4. With the PTR underway, we've had a little bit of time to test the different classes and the new builds. For Necromancer though, it's finally time for me to talk about it. This feels much better for your Necromancer enjoyers. You know, Necromancers, the guys that raise the dead. It just took them a little bit of time, but minions are actually relevant at long last. That's not to say more feedback and improvements are needed. They are, but some interesting stuff is happening here at long last. The way the minions actually organize themselves is interesting. We just like say, I don't know, direct control or something nuts like that. But power-wise, minions are going to become a staple part of builds, enhancing your damage in major ways just by existing. From the bone spear flinging mages to the powerful new golems and their unstoppable effect. The way many passives and aspects have changed to be smoother or more beneficial. We don't even need to be full minion or paragon for it, or even really commit to it. They're just good at more of a base instant level because they're scaling from you and your stats at 100% rate. You can commit harder to them, but you don't need to, and they're still going to be really nice. But what is the best build right now? Will it even survive PTR? We're going to talk about it. Starting with the topic of uniques, with the two new uniques we have. So the first unique is this one, the ebonpiercer amulet. Blight will also begin firing 4 small projectiles that pierce enemies and deal a burst of shadow damage over 3 seconds. On paper, yeah, it's solid, but it's the lucky hit silliness that's broken here. When ebonpiercer hits with these small projectiles, it might trigger lucky hit. How it's meant to work is you have multiple instances of potential to trigger lucky hit. When one of them succeeds, great, that's the lucky hit chance now expended. Only in this case it's not expended, it could trigger again and again and again. So all the different ways that lucky hit chance might benefit you, it's proccing at a very good rate because of that. But on top of that, forget that, it's also just proccing at 100% chance. From the multiple projectiles, it's permanently happening. From the damage over time, it's permanently happening. It's 100% lucky hit chance occurring constantly multiple times a second. So even if this amulet wasn't clearly broken, it'd still be good for its potential with lucky hit and the damage and so on. But because it is bugged, it is absolutely insane. And obviously the best thing you can run right now as a Necromancer in the PTR while that's happening. Will it be fixed? We don't know. It's certainly been called a bug and is at this point a well-known issue, but I still think even then Necromancers are behind some of the insane states of other classes and other builds going on, so who's to say? But while we're on this topic though, as I said, I think this unique creates the strongest build option for Necromancer while it exists like this. What's the general build you'd run with this? Well, there's a few options, but with it being very likely it's going to get changed, let's try to focus on what would work here long term. Shadow damage over time is the main damage source, so you're going to look to push that concept as far as you can. With the not so new anymore new Wither in the Paragon board, stacking with Intelligence now, you want to push Intelligence as hard as you can with a build like this. With the new way affixes work, you can get core stats to extreme numbers, like plus 2,000 to make those dots hyper effective. Wither gives you this chance to make your shadow dots deal 50% times more damage each tick, but the chance of that occurring and the damage is actually scaled in chance and damage by intelligence, so that's why it's so important. Blight might be your main skill, but enhancing that can come in different forms. You could run a golem and benefit from the unstoppable stuff, the survivability that provides. You could instead run skeletons instead, maybe push in a ring of men down in there to improve the skeleton damage potential even more. You could run no minions at all, of course, but just the way minions are working these days is quite exciting. They provide those big damage bonuses, they help with survivability. To me, it looks like running some kind of minion in any build is going to become the meta thing to do, even when you're not fully committing to them. In the background, you should see some footage now of a skeleton-focused version of this build. It's a video posted by Skulm, a top-tier Necromancer player who's been pushing the leaderboards for the last few seasons, and it's performing in a very respectable, survivable way for an unfinished version of this concept. Basically, you've got options, but the core of the build is shadow damage over time, centered around lucky hit-based procs and perks, thanks to ebonpiercer being, well, busted. Okay, so the other new unique is a pair of gloves that are a little bit less exciting. It's Screwta's Embrace. These work for Blood Surge builds specifically. It makes Blood Surge consume corpses, and that causes mini novas, and that damage can be increased by 10% per target drained by that initial cast, capped at 50%, so 5 targets for the max. But then there's no cap for the damage increase per corpse consumed. You get an extra 20% per corpse consumed, which is pretty awesome. It basically takes Blood Surge builds, which were already great for AoE clear, and makes that even better. In the situations where you're absolutely piling on kills, so there's lots of bodies to pop, that's where it's going to shine the most. Blood Surge builds are fantastic for AoE clear, and really lacking when it comes to single target. So here's a new unique. It makes your AoE clear better, and kind of helps the single target maybe, depending on whether you get lucky with procs for corpses, and if there's ads in the fight or something. It's not to say it's bad, but it's not necessarily what the build was hoping to see. The affixes on it are good either way, but I don't think this is the new unique to talk about compared to the other one. So what do I think is a safe alternative to the blight builds using ebonpiercer, if we believe it's a bug they're going to remove? Well, as fun as it is to say, there's familiar words about to be said. Bone Spear will return. But thankfully, finally, in a completely new and actually interesting way. That's because your skeletal mages can now cast Bone Spears themselves, which is fantastic. With the upgrade 1 option of Bone Mages in the Book of the Dead, the Bone Mages get a 25% chance to cast either Bone Splinters or Bone Spear if it's on your action bar. And that works how you might imagine. If you don't have Bone Splinters on the bar, it means only Bone Spears will be cast. And if you're running the affix to potentially say cast Bone Spear twice, that will work for the mages as well. That's because the minions are now fully scaling off you, your stats, even your affixes, which is awesome. Any Bone Spear related perk to give yourself will then also apply to the Bone Mages. That's why an almost classic Bone Spear build with some little pushes towards the minion benefits is going to be really good. Even your standard unique helm for a build like this, Deathless Visage, that little bombing run that it gets extra damage out per Bone Spear, that works for the Bone Mages version too. So it's loads of Bone Spears, loads of bombs, loads of perks from that. And as I said, everything's scaling at 100% rate. So you're not sacrificing anything to keep the minions alive. If you're high in health, in armor, or whatever protection, well then so are the minions, which is why they're so much more survivable at a base level in this PTR. So I also highly rate Bone Spear builds that use minions at that shallow level, scaling yourself and Bone Spear very hard, but in doing so, also your mages passively. If the ebonpiercer madness doesn't get fixed, well then that's still going to be the best option, but if it does, this very well could be the best pick. Moving away from builds and specific stuff though, I just want to highlight some of the more appreciated new details we have. Obviously everyone and their mother is running the new affix that increases the size of Decrepify. It becomes huge. It means you can easily debuff everything on screen easier, leaving you with more time to actually fight and not cast more Decrepifies. It also means everything's going to be cursed, which means more damage. There are other radius increase options like the radius increase to corpse tendril pulls. That's huge quality of life, especially when combined with a sacrilegious ring, which is going to automatically do it. And other nice perks like, yeah, the extra cast of projectiles like Bone Spears. And in general, the fact that minions scale now at 100% rate from you and your stats is how it always should have worked. It does seem like they've learned something from the Season 3 minion, the construct, and how that worked. There was other stuff that Necromancer was dealing with for no good reason, like the random force slow from Bloodmist, that's finally gone. Or how, yeah, the Golem ability, it's become a consistent, unstoppable source, which is fantastic as a buff to Golem in general, but it means we have a way to reliably get, say, Tibalt's Will procs. A lot of the stupid stuff, like after you've been healthy for a few seconds, or worse, after no damage taken of any kind for 2 seconds, which is unbelievably not good, those are finally removed or changed in big ways. This isn't to say things are perfect for a Necromancer in the PTR. They've made some interesting changes to the way your minions stand to organize them in more helpful ways. But again, without direct ability to control them, to target X enemy that's causing issues, it's always going to be a problem. It doesn't matter how ultra busted OP DPS wise they are. If the moment they come across an enemy that, you know, mechanically requires them to step into their bubble and we can't make them do that, it's not good. Of course, there's also the new bug in the PTR where the minions occasionally stand there doing nothing, even mid-fight, but they'll totally have that fixed in time for Season 4, right? But there's more to appreciate, like the improvements to various aspects. Take the aspect for hardened bones. Instead of just your minions getting 20% DR, it's now you and your minions, which is how it always should have been. A dead aspect is now very viable, especially when raw DR is harder to come by. There's the changes to the minion increase aspects. So take the occult one. This one gave you 2 extra mages. Now it also gives you 2 extra warriors. The old blood getters aspect, which would give you those extra warriors, that's now a new aspect. So now it means your skeletal priests, those are going to buff you as well as the skeletons, which is really nice. And while I do see a good amount of movement speed perks here or there for the Necromancer, it's still going to be a big limiter for the class compared to the other ones. I really hope we get some mobility and movement options in the future. I don't know, let Bloodmist have a teleport or something. We are just behind everyone else, and that's not changed. On the topic of balance, it's hard to fairly compare to other classes. Things are pretty nuts in the PTR. Some builds are wide clearing everything instantly. Even if we have really broken stuff, you know, others have even more busted stuff. And we don't know what's going to survive the PTR year or make it to season 4. They have a lot of work to do from this feedback in the PTR, and that's why we saw them delay things a bit, and it is pretty damn hard to have any faith in them with how slow they are usually. But at least it's finally exciting again, with lots of new things to try and test, new metas. We don't know what's best, and we need to play to find out. So overall, I'm positive, and that's a relief. I hope this video was a nice general update for the Necromancers in the PTR. I'll see you in Season 4 for lots of builds and testing and more. Until next time though, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.